All right, class, ALEC 425. Just a little bit of a change in what our plan is for this week. Rather than present new content and have a quiz, I want to give you an overview of what your final project is. Your draft for your final project is actually due next week on November 3rd. So I want to give you a little heads up and kind of what I'm looking for. So, your assignment for your final evaluation project is to create an evaluation plan based on what we've discussed throughout the semester. So everything that we've covered through this semester fits into you developing your plan. How you identify and develop the goals and the measures and how you plan to what you plan to measure and how you plan to measure it, who your target audience is, what your evaluation instruments might look like in terms of data collection, how you will collect and analyze that data. All the things that we've talked about through the semester fit into this final project. So what I'm asking you to do now is to take all that information, go back to the program that you identified at the beginning of the semester. I gave you some feedback on whether it was a go or not, or maybe just some minor tweaks in terms of what uh, your plan was or what your program was that you wanted to evaluate. But I will say most of you had a really good first idea of the program that you wanted to evaluate. So very few changes. So you should be good to go there. What you should be thinking about is your final project should look like a proposal. What you're developing should be as if you were an independent evaluator and you were developing a proposal to present to the funders who would hire the independent evaluator. So you're going to tell us in your plan from start to finish how you would work with the program coordinators to evaluate that particular program. That's what we're trying to do. So what I want to do here is look at just an example. If your program is similar to this, well, that's great. It's probably not, but let's just say that the program that you identified was a water quality protection educational plan, okay, or educational program, and you're going to evaluate it. That's what we've got. So, you begin by identifying what the goals are of the program. So in this case, we're saying that it's high level goals of the overall program is to decrease the presence of nitrates and pesticides in urban streams within whatever county, right? So that would be the goal. Within each of those goals, there's objectives and there's measures. So, a couple of objectives and a couple of measures possibly under each of those objectives that all tie back to that goal. So once you understand and you've identified what the goal is, a couple, maybe three objectives, and then some measures within each of those objectives, then you as the evaluator will develop the evaluation questions. Typically, you're going to have 3 to 5 high level evaluation questions. These aren't the questions that fit into a survey. These are the big questions. So within each of the big questions, you may have 4 or 5 different things that you utilize to measure that. We'll get a little more in depth on that in just a minute, but you need to understand what the goal is of the program, what the objectives and what the measures are, and then you can develop your evaluation questions that go along with that. Okay, so you've got to be able to describe the program, and this will fit into your the beginning, kind of the outline of your evaluation plan. So you're going to tell me what the program is, you're going to describe it and go into some detail. uh, uh, what are the goals and objectives, who is the target audience that it aims to reach, what's the impact that you hope to achieve or that the program hopes to achieve on the target audience, and then beyond that, if the target audience is impacted, what does that mean to the community or to society as a whole? In other words, if it were a youth education program that was aimed at maybe decreasing school dropouts, right? And keeping young people in school. Well, we know what the impact of that is on the target audience. It makes those individuals much more successful long term because they'll have a high school diploma, right? But what's the impact on society? Well, obviously, we have a more educated workforce. We have individuals who are working and not unemployed. We have individuals who are more likely to stay out of criminal activity. All those sorts of things could be a longer term impact on society. So when you're describing the program, tell us all those things. As an independent evaluator, these are the things that you expect to see from that program. Okay, that's where you start to identify your evaluation questions. And again, 3 to 5 high-level evaluation questions that you're going to answer in the ways that you collect data. Okay, once you've identified what those evaluation questions are, then you can start looking at what the sources of information are. And you're going to have multiple sources of information that would be things like how do you develop your baseline data? So there's probably data out there right now that support why this is an issue. You know, you can say if this is that water quality program that we identified just a minute ago, some of the baseline data might be the level of nitrates in the groundwater or the presence of pesticides in the groundwater. That's baseline data that's available to you, and it gives you something that then you can go back and measure against to see, did the program make a difference? So based on what we did with this program, can we say that we lowered the level of nitrates or the level of pesticides in the water as a result of this educational program? So all those sources of information for baseline are really important. Then your data collection methods, you're going to identify multiple methods, but I would say probably a minimum of 3 in your outline is what we would like to see in your plan. So obviously the easiest, um, the most readily available is just survey data, and you're going to use that most likely. But don't let that be your only data collection method. So you may use surveys, but to go along with that, you may use some focus groups, you may use some interviews, you may use some observation and some checklists and some of those things that we've talked about in data collection methods. Make sure that you identify multiple methods as you put your plan together. Okay, so some of those methods should be used for formative evaluation and some of them should be used for summative evaluation. So it may be feedback that you get from participants through an interview could be formative. It could be a quick survey during the implementation phase could be formative. But then the summative evaluation questions are going to tie right back to those evaluation questions, and they're going to be something that identifies the impact of the program overall. Part of your plan, part of what your proposal that you present for your final grade will be that you're going to include some sample data collection tools. So, if you're going to use a survey and that's your plan, I want to see a sample survey. I want you to put that in your packet that you're submitting as your proposal. Okay. If you're going to use interviews, I want to see your interview guides or your focus group protocols or your observation protocols. So whatever data collection methods you use, I want to see a sample of how you plan to implement those data collection methods. So make sure that that's included. Now, if you're going to have a 3-page survey, you don't have to include the whole thing, but I want to see a sample of the types of questions that you would include and the way that they would interact with that survey. Okay. If it's an interview, I want to see your main interview questions and maybe some follow-up interview questions that would go along with that. And an interview guide and a focus group guide are pretty similar, but I want to see kind of what the process would be that you were going to utilize to do an interview or a focus group. If you're doing observation, that's basically a checklist that says these are the things that we're going to be looking for as we observe participants who are involved in the program. Okay. And it's a checklist so that you're very consistent about what you measure and what you hope to observe as you utilize that data collection method. Data analysis, we haven't spent much time on that yet, but we will. So you're going to tell me how, once that data is collected, how you plan to analyze it and put it into a formal report. So, you're going to have quantitative and qualitative data. All your evaluations should be mixed methods. So I want to see, even if it's, a survey can have both. You can have open-ended questions that are very qualitative, but you're obviously going to have quantitative methods that are included there. So tell me how you're going to analyze and evaluate both types of data. I want to see an implementation timeline from start to finish, from the time that you begin planning all the way till you make a presentation of your evaluation findings to the stakeholders. Okay, so that would be the time that the program is being implemented, because you're going to be collecting formative data as well. So it's all the way from the very beginning all the way through. Generally speaking, 1 year is a good timeline, but there are programs that need to be longer. And, depending on what you've identified as your program, it may be something that's done over an 18-month time frame or something like that. It could be that your program is a 1 semester kind of thing, so it may be a 6-month timeline. But think about what your timeline is and lay that out in a kind of a graphic form in your proposal, so that it's very clear what some of the deliverable timelines are going to be. Okay. And then I want to see a budget. Okay. Doesn't have to be extremely detailed, but I want it to be detailed enough that I can see what you feel like this evaluation is going to cost. So this is your budget. So develop it to be realistic. But, if you tell me that I don't think it's going to cost anything, well, I'm not going to buy that, because you are an independent evaluator and your time is valuable. So you may not have a huge amount of money invested in the tools that you use to collect data or to analyze data. That may not be a big part of it, but there certainly will be time. There certainly will be expense in collecting and evaluating data and writing a formal report. So make sure that that's all represented in your budget. So I want to see a budget as a part of your proposal as well. Okay, so think about what we're doing as a proposal. You're presenting this to funders. You're trying to get the job. So it needs to be professional. It needs to be attractive. It doesn't just need to be a text heavy document like a term paper. That's not what I want to see. I want to see headings, and I want to see some paragraphs. I'd like to see some tables and some data, not data that is from an evaluation, but data that supports why you think this is important, why this program is important. So that sort of thing will be in there. Okay. You're not going to have data that you've collected because the program is not happening yet. You're developing your proposal for how you would analyze, how you would collect. But I don't want to see just a 3-page paper that's just very text heavy. Okay. Make it look like a proposal that you were going to present to somebody if you were trying to get this job. Professional, attractive, well written. Doesn't matter one bit to me what the format is. Okay. I want you to be creative. You have full license to present this in a way that you think is appropriate for what we're trying to do. If you have questions about it, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I'd love to talk to you or help you if you need it as you walk through. Again, no quiz this week, no formal information to be shared this week. Use this time to start laying out what your proposal might look like, so that next week, when it's time for you to submit your rough draft, you're ready to go. If you have questions, get in touch with me. Thanks, and giggle.